My watch is fast, okay.
It's 129.
Yeah. Thanks for pitching and forming the lunch.
Sure. I do get a pay differential.
Did you?
Yeah.
All right.
No, I'm asking. I do, don't I?
Absolutely. Yeah, we rated a curve here too, and you're in second place.
0 plus 0 equals 0. Triple my pay.
Triple your pay, yeah.
We want to recognize Ms. Kaufman too. She's
Oh, yes,
a
okay.
board member.
Okay. All right, are we synchronized with our watches now?
Yeah.
Our timepieces? All right. Well, good afternoon, folks, and welcome to our August lamp board meeting. I appreciate everybody coming, and always good to see everybody. I wasn't able to make the last one, and Wayne Flowers stepped in and did a fine job, I understand, so that's good in reviewing the minutes here. Also, I'd like to recognize Irene Kaufman, our newest board member. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's nice to meet you. Maybe we could chat afterwards
Sure.
a little bit.
Okay, I look forward to serving.
Yep, excellent, excellent. Okay, well, very good. We'll call the meeting to order. The first thing I'd like to do is typical with St. Johns County public meetings, there's a announcement that needs to be actually read, so I'm going to read it. The Lamp Conservation Board serves as an advisory board which makes recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. This is a properly noticed public meeting held in accordance with the requirements of Florida law. Members of the public will be given reasonable opportunity to be heard on propositions before the board, as those items are addressed on the agenda. For public comments on matters not being considered by the board today, a general public comment period will be provided to address the board on matters within its jurisdiction. Each person addressing the board shall limit comments to 3 minutes. Person shall not address the board or any member thereof unless specifically recognized by the chairperson to do so. Once recognized, members of the public shall address their comments to the board as a whole. Public comment is intended for the board to hear from the public and shall not be considered an opportunity to demand immediate responses from the board or its members. Board members shall not engage in dialogue with persons making public comment unless the question or comment is directed through the chair or made with permission of the chair. Technicalities for county meetings. All right, everybody have an agenda? Okay, looks like we're going to have a general public comment for items not on the agenda. So that's an opportunity for anyone in the public if you have something on your mind that you'd like to bring in front of us right now.
Oh, yes, sir. This is Ed Slavin, box 3084, staugustgreen.com. I want to thank all of y'all for your work. I'd like to request that these meetings be televised and held in the county auditorium and televised on GTV and live streaming video. And I'd love to make a presentation maybe at your next meeting about the St. Augustine National Historical Park and National Seashore. I was elated to see the commission vote at their last meeting to acquire a 31-acre tract, the Genevar tract, for a park and a boat ramp adjoining State Route 312 and the river. And I told the commissioners we need to make sure that that 17 million and change doesn't count to your meager $500,000 annual authority. And I asked them to put in a line item, and they really do need to add more money for y'all to recommend land acquisition for. I thought it was a disgrace that it was limited to 5 million, but 500,000. But thank you for all you do, and thank you for taking public comment, and thank you for letting me testify by telephone. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Anything else from the public?
You are at $1 million now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That'll be $1.5 million
Come October.
come this October.
That's really good. Yeah, really good. Okay, So we have in front of you, the last meeting was June 14th. There's a set of minutes in front of you. Any comment on those meeting minutes? If not,
I move that
Oh.
the meeting minutes are approved.
Travis, did you have a,
Yeah, I just had one comment. I'll second, and then we can have comment.
okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to, I think I probably made mention of this at every meeting today. Again, I feel like the meeting minutes don't really capture the essence of the meeting as well as the audio recording, of course. I did have the opportunity to review the audio recording this morning. And again, there's just some inconsistencies. There's some information that's important, I think, that's left out of the minutes. So I guess what I'd like to say here is make a written record of it, if possible, is to anybody that's looking through the written meeting minutes, really the best resource is the audio recordings. So I don't know if we can put that in our meeting minutes today, but if anybody's trying to get a record of what occurred, what happens here, it's really not captured in the written meeting minutes. It's on the audio. And so I would suggest everybody have an opportunity to find those files and listen to them for the best record of what happens here. That's all.
Okay. Ryan, on that subject, I know you do the best you can in trying to keep these meeting minutes and that type of thing. Is it something that our board could request a formal secretary come in and keep meeting, somebody that's used to keeping meeting minutes that can perhaps write faster or type faster or something like that?
Certainly, you could request it.
Any thoughts?
Yes. I think the meeting minutes do a pretty good job of reflecting what meeting minutes are supposed to do, and it's capture the highlights. They're not going to capture detail, they never can. I don't think you need to change how it would certainly help staff if there was somebody that actually could do the meeting minutes properly, but and with more detail. But I just think making the audio available is fine. Anybody wants to hear it can hear it. I think that works just fine. I don't know, that's true of all sorts of meetings. If you want to see a commission meeting, you can go back and
Yeah.
hear all the minutes. Yeah.
Travis, was that easy enough to access and get to? And
Well, it was not this time. I think Ryan can attest to that. I was provided an FTP site to go to download those audio recordings. I went there yesterday to download them and they were gone. So I contacted Ryan actually directly, and he said that, because of the file size, that they had to be deleted from the FTP site, and I would need to put in a public records request if I wanted to review those audio recordings. This morning, Ryan was able to correct that and post last meeting on the FTP site. The other meetings were not on there. But I did go ahead and make contact with Commissioner Blackford to request that our meeting audio recordings be put on the GTV website. I mean, again, we just have an audio recording. We're talking about megabytes, not gigabytes. I think I said this in February meeting. Here we are in August. But nonetheless, yes, that I think is the best solution. It's year 2022. Meeting minutes were created in the early 18th century when technology was pen and paper, right? So we're in 2022. We've got access to audio, video, good quality stuff, or reliable technology. Let's just put it all out there on a website that everybody can access. And again, I don't know why I have to belabor this point, but I feel like it should have been done by now.
okay, so we'll just continue to work towards that. But I'm kind of with JB here as far as the written minutes are not supposed to be a dissertation.
No, Wayne said it's not a transcript.
Right. It's the highlights.
And what the meeting minutes don't say from last meeting is that actually Wayne had requested of staff that they report back to us in getting the records posted. Melvin said he'd look into it, and Wayne had requested that a report be given back to us regarding that progress. That is not on the agenda. If I didn't bring it up today, it would have been missed. So meeting minutes don't reflect the fact that we need to get the meeting minutes corrected and the audio recording accessible to everybody. It's being glossed over yet another meeting. So I think that reiterates the point just right there.
Go ahead, Wayne.
I think it's fair criticism to point out when things are missed, you know, that are relevant. And I would certainly say that was one. And I guess the issue is finding the happy medium between making sure you've got all the relevant bullet points and actions taken versus, you know, what ends up being a complete transcript. So, I mean, I think it's fair to comment and note where things are missed. But again, we're never going to have a verbatim transcript, and I would certainly agree with Travis that there's got to be a way to make the audio tapes at least accessible online.
Okay, so I guess that's a homework item.
Yes, and
Okay.
to provide additional update on that, I have reached out to
Yep,
our MIS,
yep.
and they basically said if the file sizes are too large from our webmaster, but maybe, you know, with Commissioner Blocker's assistance or somebody else in administration, we might be able to get this addressed.
Okay,
Can I ask Travis a question? How big was the file that you?
I think it was 189 megabytes.
Yeah, it's big. On a typical website, that's prohibited, typically.
So I've got them, you know, if anybody wants any copies, I can put them on our FTP site and provide a link.
And again, I hate to belabor this, is the issue that the FTP site didn't stay up long enough, or?
No, I think from a public standpoint, it would be ideal. I don't think it's really too much to ask that because we are a board, no different from the TZA board or county commission, that we have our agenda or our minutes, audio recordings on the government TV website like all the other boards. I don't see why we're different. I don't know why someone would have to go to even to the LAMP board website to find this information. GTV is a perfect resource. It has all the other boards and committees. We're a board. Let's just put it on that website. I spoke with that company that hosts the GTV and does all the indexing. And they said, what are you asking to post? I said, audio files. They said, no problem. We could probably just include that without any change to the contract. Because in the scheme of things, web hosting, 189 megabytes is nothing. It's nothing.
Well, 6 times a year is not.
Yeah.
If it was weekly, it might be.
Yeah.
But
So there's really no good reason. And this is what I brought out, the quote I stated, I think last meeting or the meeting before, is when you don't want to do something, you find a reason why it can't happen. If it's a priority, you find a reason for it to make it happen. And so do we want the public to have access to the audio recordings? I think it's a great idea. I think it sheds light on this whole program. I think it provides a historic record for any future LAMP board member to go back, in the year 2026 and go back and say, hey, how did we get to this criteria? What was the thought behind it? Because that's not recorded in the meeting minutes, the written stuff. So it just creates a nice record. We have the technology. I don't feel like there's too big of a challenge for St. Johns County to be able to accomplish this. I've been pushing for it since February. It's now August. I know things move slowly, but I guess I'll just continue to bring it up until it's actually done.
And we have a motion on the floor.
yes, so as far as approving the minutes, you made a motion and you seconded it. Any discussion?
do you want to amend the minutes to include that? What we just discussed that you.
Yeah, I'd be happy to amend it and to add the point that Travis made in terms of the directive or request of staff to provide an update on this task. And
Yeah, that's,
actually, she made the motion.
I made
so
the motion. And I
I
don't have a
second.
problem with that, but
I'm
I think
amending her
also,
motion.
if we want to clarify that, do we want to set a timeline for staff to update us? Because we didn't do that last month, and, Ryan wasn't here.
Right.
So, do we want to ask that by next month, we have an answer, and that way it's done and answered, and
Yeah.
Travis can
Move on.
relax.
Yeah, I think with Ryan being gone last meeting, that, you know, we were down to the bench,
Yeah.
second string, yep.
Sorry.
But it's a strong bench.
Thanks.
Successful team has a strong bench.
So I'm open to that friendly amendment and
And I'll re-second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of approving these minutes with the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Travis? Okay. Okay, so be it. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I guess I have a question. Do we want to approve it or do you want to just tell us later on about the two that are full?
Yeah, I'll give you an update, sure. If you want, I can give you an update now.
There's two properties pulled. Do we want to approve the agenda like it stands or do we want to have him pull those before?
Or do we want to discuss some of the items?
Well, if they're pulled, they're pulled. They're sold.
Well, I mean, besides those properties, like item number one, as far as frequency of our meetings, do we
We're
need?
just approving the agenda. We'll get there when we get there.
Okay,
Okay, I'll just motion to approve the agenda and you can update us when we get to that.
Sure.
I'll second.
all in favor? Any discussion? All in favor to approve this agenda?
Got one discussion item.
Okay,
My understanding is that we've got 7 properties in front of us, but this is a mock exercise. I don't know that we need 7 properties to do a mock exercise on. I feel like we should strike perhaps 4 of them, pick 3 to do the mock exercise so that we can then move faster into evaluating the criteria and the data sources that we need to actually make an effective criteria and effective program. Because again, what was not reflected in the meeting minutes that you have before you, but that was stated, was that this is only a mock exercise and that this has no bearing on actually, you know, the process as far as whether these properties move forward or not.
Somewhere it said as time allows, so I don't know that we have to plow through all of them. Plus, 2 of them are pulled and New Salem's not available anymore. So we're weeding them down.
let's, Travis, good point. Let's get through some of these items and then go to the section 2 here where we have the properties, and you can talk about that a little bit, and that'll kind of give us the ones that we're going to focus on during this mock exercise here, okay? Okay. Number 1, discussion of,
Approval of agenda?
Yeah, vote.
We didn't,
All in favor?
we didn't vote, we got a motion and a second.
okay, we got a motion and a second. Okay, we had some discussion. Everybody good? All in favor of approving this agenda? Any opposed? So be it, okay. Line item number 1, discussion of future meetings in the 2023. How's everybody feel about quarterly meetings or every other month? To continue our current schedule, the next meeting dates would be, as you see printed there, October 4th, December 6th, and so on.
I don't think quarterly's enough.
At least not currently.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get a system running, we may be able to jump to quarterly at some point and get more efficient in terms of, you know, the system that we have, but we're still working it out, I think.
So it sounds like we're leaning towards every other month like we're doing now. Yep, yep.
Do we want to vote on that, or is that?
Well, I think we're establishing the schedule,
Yeah.
are we not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so as the schedule is there before you, you see the dates there, every other month. Do we have a motion to approve that and start and continue going every other month?
Is
Jay-
that, it looks like,
Yep, JB makes a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I think you brought up some good points.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was just gonna quickly confirm, but I assume that's the same Tuesday we've been meeting.
Correct.
Another month's got it.
Yeah.
Unless we want to change it. Tuesday seems to be working for the majority of us, so
Yep.
I think that's fine. Works for staff?
We selected this Tuesday because it doesn't run on the board.
This
Conflict,
is
yeah.
Second Tuesday, October 4th would be a first Tuesday.
Oh, would it?
Yeah,
A lot of those dates actually look.
all the dates are.
Yeah, they look
first
like
Tuesday.
first Tuesdays instead.
Yeah.
So it would be first, not second Tuesday. Yeah, as I said in the earlier part
Well-
of that agenda item.
But the board, doesn't they meet first and third? BCC?
It very well could be. I need
Yeah,
to
I
double
think
check
you're
that.
hitting board meetings with these dates.
So that's why we selected the second Tuesday, right? As
Pretty
you were
sure.
saying.
So this would be amended second Tuesday.
Yep.
See, 11.
And so as the calendar reflects.
Yeah, BCC is on the 4th of October, so we'd be the 11th.
So that'd be 11, 13, 14,
Apologize for that.
10. No problem. 13,
Ooh, Valentine's Day would be
Eight.
better. Ooh.
10.
All right,
Okay.
I'll be sure to get the corrected dates out to you to confirm.
Oh, one question. This is Ed Slavin. On before this motion's decided, could you please request that these meetings be held in the auditorium at the county administration building and televised on GTV? And I think that solves the problem about the minutes, maybe. But these meetings are held in a remote location in a building that most people don't know where it is. And it seems to me that you should not be hiding our light under a bushel basket. Lance work is important, and as Jefferson said, a public office is a public trust. And I thank you.
Okay, so did we have a motion to approve the second Tuesday? That, JB, that was you?
Second Tuesday, yes, as a.
As the dates reflected that Holly gave us really quickly?
I'll second.
Second by Travis. Any discussion? Okay. That item is done.
No, we didn't
Yeah.
vote.
We did vote.
We didn't vote. All in favor?
Can we have the meetings in the auditorium, please?
Aye.
Have them be televised. Could we please discuss that and have a colloquy at least?
There's motion on the floor right now, Ed. We're going to vote on it. If somebody has another motion, we'll do that.
Okay,
Well, I guess silence gives consent to your all's not doing your job. And it needs to be televised and on GTV. There's no principled principled reason for not doing it. Public office is a public trust.
Did we vote?
we didn't vote.
We didn't
Okay,
vote.
so we have a motion and a second
And discussion.
and discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Chair, do you want to talk about the point at all regarding the meeting location, or do you want to just?
Yeah, so time to talk about it.
Yep. Mr. Slavin, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yep. We will charge staff with finding out if we can get in the auditorium and televised.
God bless you. Thank you, sir.
So, Ryan, if you could make a note of that.
Sure.
And report back next meeting, please, through the chair.
Next meeting or next month? You said before next month.
No, I'm saying next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot to do in the next month.
Okay, so those of you in the public, is there any public comment on Agenda 1? I guess that's just you, huh?
I'm not.
Your staff?
Yep.
Okay. And you guys are staff also?
Yes.
And the fellow was in here stepped out, so.
Yeah, okay. By the way, just real quick, can you all introduce yourselves?
I'm Haley. I'm a GIS technician. I'm just here for technical support. We're trying to figure things out, so.
Okay.
I'm Trey Asner. I'm the cultural resource coordinator for the county.
I'm Sean Melvin. I'm environmental specialist with the county.
Okay. You were pinch hitting last meeting, right? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for doing that, by the way.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
This is maybe out of order, but could we find out more about our new board member? Or is that something we want to do later? We all introduced ourselves, so.
I don't see it on the agenda here. Can we put you on the spot and get an elevator speech?
Okay, sure. So I'm Irene Kaufman. I lived in Northeast Florida for 22 years now. I live in South Ponte Vedra Beach, so yes, I do live in District 4, which is how I was originally recommended for this board position. And also my volunteer work at the GTM Research Reserve connected me to people who eventually recommended me for this board. So I do a variety of volunteer jobs in this county, in St. Johns County. One of them is the Guardian Ad Litem program, so I advocate for children in court. Also St. Johns County School District volunteer, where I read to pre-K students. Even when I'm working with children, it's one of my specialties is talking about the environment and our natural resources that we have to offer in this wonderful area, and making people more aware of how to conserve and preserve our resources here. Anything else about me? I live on the beach, so I'm very fortunate in that respect. So I was not familiar with other areas of the county as I am with this coastal area. So I did take the time to go and visit all 7 properties, as close as I could get to them. Because as you all know, there are many of them that you can't really access, but close as I could get to just kind of get a feel for the areas that we're looking at, because we're not only looking at coastal areas, there's so many other wetlands and areas that should be conserved within this county. So that's a little.
All right, excellent. Yeah, well, thank you, yeah, and we look forward to your involvement with us. You can see we're trying to figure out what we're gonna morph into here, so, it's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not the end result, it's the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was also on a citizen review board previously. It's been several years, maybe 8 years ago, as the design review board for the North Coastal Corridor. So I was the chair of that board for 8 years and served out my term on that board.
well, good.
Yeah.
We could maybe use some future leadership here. This could work out with your chairwoman experience. Okay. All right, well, thank you. All right, are we ready to move on to number 2?
Saying don't be absent for a meeting.
Yeah.
Something like that.
All right, we'll move on to line item number 2, evaluation of these properties here, and it's in a packet, correct, Ryan? Yep. You should have it in a packet here.
No, but I probably have like 2.
Oh,
You get to crawl under the table now.
Okay.
So Ryan, do you want to discuss these?
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna get my own copy.
Sure.
You can see there this came from Pat Hamilton, now from March of this year. The owner is basically asked to submit for lamp consideration, and I've got it up on the board now here. It's north of State Road 312, and near the subdivision of Anastasia Lakes. And basically they're written, this is from an email from Pat Hamilton. This is why it has come for our consideration here at the board. The staff comments include it's a roughly 50-acre wetland tract, all salt marsh. The owner wants to prohibit docks from being installed within the property by adjacent neighbors. And it says requesting some cash and gifting some to the county for a tax break. I'm not sure what that actually means, but property is an open space tract owned by the Anastasia Lakes subdivision, and there may be some imminent development, may not be relevant as there's new docks you know, would need an owner's authorization anyways from this piece. Based on review, it may score relatively low overall, although it is 100% salt marsh. It already is within a conservation land use with open rural zoning. And so basically, you would need a permit from state and federal agencies to do anything on this property anyways. So there it sits, it's 50 acres of salt marsh. The southern 2.7 acres is within the city limits.
That little strip on the south end.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, yep.
Can I add something? That I found out as I was doing some additional stuff, that actually is the historic waterway for what is now called Quarry Creek, which is the creek that, if you continue north, and it comes out around the south, you'd have to pull down. But it started just south of where today Hope Road is, went straight up through the Anastasia Lakes development, that hole there. And it just has some historical significance in the standpoint of what it used to be. And it all came up in here and then turned and went out right here. And what made it important was it was how they got quarried material from the main King's Quarry out to the marsh at a landing and then took it to the city. And back in the day, it was called Stonecutters Creek, back in the late 1700s, and now it's called Quarry Creek. But it was cut off when in 1923 or 25 and 26, this was all filled. So they cut this off and completely blocked the natural flow. And that's why they cut a ditch. Yeah, this ditch. This was a ditch that was cut to help flow, that was blocked, get back out. So this creek that's at the head of Fish Island Marina used to just kind of peter out right here, but now takes on water. So it has some kind of cool historical significance, but the chlor part's downstream.
What's the ownership of all that marsh area west of that parcel? Or is it all below mean high water?
You have it turned on, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
Judging by the lots that are already there, it's probably
Yeah.
marsh. So,
It's owned by
Marsh, but that doesn't mean it's sovereign submerged.
yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it's privately owned.
which wouldn't surprise me.
I gave this property a total of 26 based on our evaluation form, without knowing purchase cost for long-term.
Yeah, which we can't know.
So 26 is what I came up with, 65.
I give it a 29.
There you go. That settles it.
I get 36, which is not really much higher. I mean, it's just, what'd you do?
I thought in going through the exercise, I felt unqualified to rank based on endangered or threatened species habitat, or endemic species, aquifer recharge. Let's see what else. The historic and archaeological resources, which, you know, I mean, given the location and all, you could guess that there might be some sort of value there, but not knowing. And so I feel like those are sort of the classifications that with all of the properties I kind of came to, and I'm like, well, I don't know enough to be able to actually give a number for. So I was in the low 20s, but I also left several of them blank, not knowing how to score them.
Yeah,
So-
we all have the same evaluation criteria sheet. I mean,
Yeah, I tried to shrink it.
Made it fit on a page.
What's their date? I think I was using one dated 2/15.
I don't have the,
Yeah, mine's 2/15,
215. I think some of them
Yes.
are squashed and some.
I thought I had one squash, but apparently I've got the first original one, so
Okay.
not
Mine-
criteria
Is
evaluation.
yours say 2/15 down here?
Yes.
Mine printed out on like 5 pieces of paper.
So are these the ones where we're doing the mock exercises? Is that,
This is actually an evaluation to place on the meeting list for the Board of County Commissioners. You know, basically our top 5 goes at the end of every year. which this year will be January, that we set up a Board of County Commissioners meeting when we select those top 5 from our list. So this is an actual exercise to rank and put them on their list.
How it stacks out on the list,
Yeah,
okay.
check the meeting minutes. It was a mock. It's a mock. It's clear on the meeting minutes, Ryan. It's not reflected in the meeting minutes, but that's okay. I mean, that's what we're going through,
Yeah.
how we rated it.
This is an evaluation,
Yeah.
so
But it's not the final evaluation.
But this is, the point of frustration I have, and I know you all can hear it in my voice, is this is an agenda item. This is really the only major agenda item we have. And to not have clarity on whether this is a real exercise or a mock exercise should never happen. Should never happen, guys. I don't know what else to say.
well, just to respond, this is a real exercise, to put it forward.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. My understanding based on the conversation last month is we wanted to try this out, that it wasn't necessarily going to be the end all. It's like we hadn't gone through this exercise before, and we all kind of have different ideas of what each one of these things mean. So the conversation was we would go through this. And again, the other part of the conversation was that we would not have to actually submit a list until January, I believe, because we originally thought we had to have it before the end of the fiscal year. But after reading the ordinance, I think there was an understanding or agreement that it's
The
calendar
weird
year.
plan, yeah, that's right.
So we would have time to come back, after we kind of go through this, again, whatever term you want to use, mock, practice, whatever would be, then we would have that opportunity at the October meeting, I guess, that's the next meeting. But that's my 2 cents, that's what I understood that we were going to be doing. And again, Ryan was not here at the meeting last month, so that might not have gotten translated. But
Sure.
That's that was our intent.
Yep. Elizabeth, you had a comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to offer as a suggestion for a starting point to even start going through this, just to start going line by line through this
Through a couple of them.
worksheet.
Yeah.
And start to identify where the gaps are, where people are gonna need additional information. I know I found some, repetitive categories that I couldn't really differentiate between. So if we're able to get through even just one property, I think we will work towards both revising this sheet and start to figure out what additional information this board would like to request from the county when we're evaluating these properties.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
I agree. I thought we were gonna try to get at what exactly acquisition criteria we wanted to look at. I thought that's where we were left the discussion.
So would it be best to pick, say, one property initially? And maybe one that has a lot of interest, so the discussion would be maybe a little more, like, what's the property out on, by your McCullough Creek?
13,
I
yeah.
think that's one that probably scored high on most everybody's, I would think. And if that was one, as an example, then we go through that one particular piece of property, line by line, like Elizabeth said, I think that'd be a good exercise.
Or as an alternative, if we want to think of this as a mock, we could select one of the properties that's off the table, and then we're not really doing an official exercise. That's just throwing it out there.
That would be really good. Personally, I think it matters.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, whether it's a real or practice run, it's up to the board members
Okay.
to decide.
Okay.
Because
Well-
nothing's gonna be decided today.
Yeah, it sounds like we're all willing to go, as you suggest, pick two, and I mean, this one, it sounds like it's scored pretty low, so that's an exercise in and of itself, a mock exercise, that, okay, here's an example of a low-scoring one, so that we kind of have a benchmark a little bit. And then if you want to jump over to that one in Elkton on County Road 13 South, that may have scored a little better, and that way we'll all be kind of consistent on how we're looking at these things. And those of us that maybe don't understand what some of the criteria means, we can figure that out as we go through this. How does that sound?
All right?
So since we're on this one right now, anybody that has done an evaluation, could you just, we've heard like 2 or 3 of you that did it and came up with a score. Is there anybody else that would like to reveal a score?
I was
Wayne?
going to say, rather than reveal the score, I mean, I think what Elizabeth suggested is kind of going down the list and, how did you look at
See if it's
this, and
viable.
how did you score it, and like see how different minds were looking at these criteria, and then
I agree.
evaluate, as Elizabeth said, I kind of agree, some of them are repetitive.
Yeah, it's
Is there a
almost
way to
like we're
collapse them
evaluating
over?
the form. More
Well-
than the property at this point,
Well,
but,
we are, that's okay.
but yeah, my suggestion.
Okay, does that sound good? Everybody have a copy of the form in front of them?
Dated 2/15/22, is that right?
Down in the lower left? Yep. Okay, well, you want me to read through each one and we'll discuss it, or does that sound good?
For this property, for the Anastasia property,
No, just for the
just in
form.
general.
Yeah.
Okay, so does everybody understand the first category is environmental? There's a lot of strength in this room in environmental. Preserves ecological diversity and habitat.
I thought we were going through on the actual property.
So did I, only
Yeah.
because
Addressing
then you
it on
can
each one
talk
of these.
specifics.
Because
Not
we
just the
beat this
form.
up already,
Yeah.
a lot.
Well, I think the point is 1 and 2, the top 2 are the same, I think.
Yeah, so if I can chime in here too, because, I mean, non-environmental background, right? I need to understand what this means
Okay,
and what is the data source that we're gonna be pointing to. And I think it's fair to have the criteria listed, perhaps a short explanation as far as what this represents. Because again, we may have that discussion today. There's gonna be a board, if this program survives, in 2026 that may be using this tool to give them a little clue what this means. And then also a category or a column that kind of suggests possible data sources to look to inform that criteria. That way, we're not all just kind of drawing numbers without any context behind it.
I'll just, in the history of this form from way back, one of the primary sources for funding besides the county money was intended as match money. And the primary sources were Florida Communities Trust dollars and Florida Forever and those kind of dollars. So as you're doing a grant application to the state for the big money, somebody said something about a $17 million property and we don't have 17, it's, a lot of this language comes directly from those grant applications. And that is also, I know some of them seem redundant, but in the grant applications, they're also redundant. And I've been where you are with that, going to every single public meeting about these grant applications saying, this is redundant. If I didn't score 5 points this time, I'm not gonna score 5 points in this category. But so that's sort of the genesis behind, I know you said one time a couple meetings ago, I came in like,
Yeah.
but that's where my head's at because I've written so many of these grants. That's where a lot of this language came from originally.
So a data source, correct me if I'm wrong, a data source from Florida Forever program or Florida Community Trust would be the data source?
No, those programs give you data sources to look at too. There's FNA and Florida Natural Inventories Act.
Do you have an
Access.
Florida natural areas.
Yes, yeah. Florida's Natural Areas Inventory, and that's on an online database for land and plant life and animal life and endangered species and stuff like that. And then you go in and DEP's got the waters, the protected waters, and so you see if it's adjacent to one of the, protected water quality type places that the county has, if it offers habitat for a listed species, or if the listed species is physically seen on it, a lot of times that counts as 2 different things. You can get the habitat points, but unless you see a gopher walking across it, you don't get those points. So it's, but that's just I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's kind of where the genesis of these came from back in the day when we had lots of money to go running after.
JB.
And understand this isn't black and white. You can't go to your world,
Yeah.
my world, GIS data source, and score this piece of property and say, oh yeah, this needs to get a 4 or whatever. It's gonna be somewhat subjective based on understanding the habitat and all those different things. So You know, as an example, this first one, preserved ecological birds and habitat, it does preserve it, salt marsh, it's high quality salt marsh, actually, it's not bad at all. And so it, you know, in my opinion, it would get a much higher ranking. But the next part down, which says provides habitat to listed species, you kind of have to know that that habitat supports a fairly good suite of listed species in the state of Florida, mostly wading birds. And so, whereas a piece of, to note its respect, if you were looking at it, comparing it to a pine flatwoods of equal size, it's not going to have the list of listed species. That doesn't make it any less valuable ecologically. It would score maybe well on the first one, but not as high
Yeah.
on the second one. So there's some subjectivity in it, no matter what we do. And I've definitely scored differently than Elizabeth would, and we're both biologists, and that's okay. Because I assume what we're going to do is kind of have an average
Right.
of everybody's scores.
Well,
Does that make sense?
it does, and I would just like to add, I mean, none of us are going to be the expert in every one of these categories. That's why we're a diverse board.
Yeah.
Right, otherwise we'd all be computer geeks, or we'd all be biologists, or we'd all be realtors, or construction people, or whatever.
Geologist or.
Yeah, attorneys,
Engineers.
you know, once in a while an attorney slips in here and that kind of thing, so it's good
Let that
to,
happen.
it's good to have those people too. So we bring this diversity of expertise here for that reason. And so, Travis, don't put pressure on yourself that if you don't understand one of these categories, all of a sudden you have to get educated in that
No,
category.
I think it goes back to the ordinance, and the ordinance says it should be based on objective criteria. And I feel like this board should be made up of some non-scientific people. I mean, there should be some person that lives in some house off of King Street, some other person. It doesn't necessarily, an advisory board shouldn't necessarily have to depend on expertise of scientific people. It's great that we have it, especially as we're designing this program, but why can't the general public also run this board? And if they can, and if they should, then we should, as general non-scientific people, be able to at least go to some data source that says, yes, this property contains whatever it is, and these are the type of species we want to protect, or something like that. I don't buy into the idea that somehow my opinion becomes lesser as one of the members of the board because I don't have a scientific background. And so I just say, oh, when it comes to this category, I just kind of put 0 or I put 3 because I just don't understand. I don't know. I don't believe that's how this board should operate.
I don't think that was suggested.
No.
Well, it was suggested that somehow I shouldn't put pressure on myself by not knowing how to score a category. And I'm saying, as a general public person on this board, like anybody else in the general public, we should have the opportunity to cast a vote based on knowledge that's presented at a meeting, equally as you do and your tools that you have available. From a principle standpoint, we should have equality on this board, and everybody should have the ability to weigh in equally on whatever is before the board.
Mr. Flowers.
I would respectfully, I guess, kind of disagree with what you're saying in this respect. I think any collegial board is going to bring varying levels of expertise or different types of expertise to whatever task they're involved in doing. I was on the Housing Finance Authority for 13 years for the county. And we had, you know, again, my expertise, I know a little bit about public finance and, you know, some legal issues, but we had some folks who had a lot of expertise in real estate on that board, who knew a lot more about markets and those sorts of things. We had people that had expertise in construction for purposes of construction projects that we were involved in. And I certainly didn't necessarily accept whatever one of those other persons said to me as for purposes of making a decision or evaluating something. But you know, I certainly was willing to listen based on their experience and expertise in terms of making my own mind up. And that's how I see this process working. And that is, we're going to get information, and we're probably going to have different opinions about it. And we're going to have circumstances where we just don't know enough about it to really give an evaluation or to really feel confident in an evaluation. And so you listen to the other folks who might have some input, whether it's expertise or opinion, and then make your mind up, and you make the decision.
And I would agree. I think that's a great point. And I think in order to do that, that information has to be presented at a public meeting and has to be discussed in a public meeting. And I know this was a mock exercise. What we were tasked with was like a black box process where we go off, we score, we come back with a score, and everybody unveils our score. That doesn't work. So if we are going to use the benefit of all our collective expertise, this has to be a public process where the information is presented publicly. JB, you can weigh in as the expert in the environmental field.
No, yeah, no.
And I can sit back and listen and say, I have no idea about pine flatwoods or whatever, stuff, and I'm learning. But it cannot be a black box process. And again, I know this was a mock exercise, but we got to do that in the public forum with everybody, seeing how the score came about. And that takes time, but I think it also takes preparation.
Well, it's worthy to take that time. If we go through, like Elizabeth has suggested, if we go through here and say the first one preserves ecological diversity and habitat, if it's something that I don't understand, and I'm one of the members, I want to say, Holly, explain that to me. You happen to be an expert in this or not expert. What you know more about it than I do. He gives me an explanation of why he thinks this should be he's not going to tell me it has to be a 4, but I think it should rate high. And here's why. That's what I take into consideration because I trust in his judgment, hopefully. And that's how, to me, it works. And you might not agree, and you're like, no, I'll give it a 2, or maybe I'll give it a 4. If we go through a line item like this, I think that will give us comfort at the end that we all at least thought about it the same way, and we gave our scores. And then, again, if we do an average at the end of everybody's scores, some of these are just probably never going to get anywhere close to where we think it will probably make the top 5. It might, because we may not have any of this score that high. We don't know that, but we come up with an average score based on what we just did, the exercise. Did that make, I think I said that right.
Now, I guess the only other point, though, is how quickly can we do this? I mean, how many properties can you get through in a meeting if we're going to go line by line on each property? I mean, I would think, Elizabeth, you said there was like 700 properties in Nassau County? I mean, how does that operate? Because I can't imagine us getting through maybe 3 or 4 a meeting.
Well, I don't want to lose sight of my suggestion to go through this, but I think getting to your point, Travis, I don't think there's going to be a way for this program to work unless this board is receiving additional information up front when these properties come through, right? There's kind of like, diversity and habitat. Maybe we need a habitat map. That comes with our packet. Okay? Maybe there's a couple maps that we need to be seeing up front. But I think the reason I suggested we do it that way is to identify those gaps and start to identify potential data sources, and then get rid of some categories, talk about where people got their information from, and then go from there. And I think we're just kind of spinning right now, and I really want to try to get us back.
I would like
Do
to,
this.
I would like to add, because you kind of brought us back to where we need to move forward. And I think, Shorty, you suggested it as far as the data sources that folks can use if you don't know the category. You can go to that data source and get an idea, okay, what's listed species in a
Well,
marsh?
The
And
other
that-
thing is, we have staff here with expertise. We've got 2 environmental guys and a historic guy. So, we got staff with expertise. Yeah. We use them for resources as well.
So I'm trying not to reinvent this thing, because I know we went through like 6 meetings just to come up with this form. But if we can be efficient this afternoon, we have like a little over an hour to go. If we can be efficient this afternoon, because I like your idea of if there's redundancy on here, let's strike it. But if we keep reinventing this form, we're not making progress. And it's like we have to get started with something. And Shorty, I don't know if putting another category on here, Elizabeth, that has the data source, like FNA or DEP or Corps of Engineers or St. Johns County, if that would help individuals that maybe don't know about these categories, where to go to find that information, what does the board think about that?
I wouldn't say that's needed if it's all gonna be presented publicly. I mean, that was kind of, you know, a solution if the information's not gonna be there and I have to rely on something to score. But if all that, I mean, I think what we decided is if it's all in the air, then maybe that data is presented or that source is presented at the time. It's not necessary. It's fine. Either way, it's fine.
Can I make a real quick point? And that is like Brevard County as an example, they have their committee, like we are. They have a, I guess it would be called a subcommittee of professional ecologists, biologists, archaeologists, anthropologists. They go out and actually assess each piece of property, bring it back to the committee and say,
Give a report.
here's our score, or here's our report, or whatever. We don't have that luxury. The state has the Florida Natural Areas Inventory and Department of State to come back and say, yes, this is high, this is low, this is high. And they do have a matrix, but so they have that expertise. We have the expertise of the staff in the county, so I think we have to rely on that to give us at least I might not disagree. I might disagree with something that Ryan puts out, but at least we all have the same information. I think that's essential.
Real early on in the beginning, Jan gave us all those maps. It is on the map mart, yay GIS, but it's on the map mart. It's got historical probability, you know, archaeological probabilities. It's got type of land, soils. There's a soils map on there. There's a future land use map on there, so you can see if it's imminently threatened with development nearby. I mean, everything is really on the maps that are already out
Available.
available
Right.
on the GIS map mart. And they say map mart, which makes you think it's for sale, but it's not. It's for free. It's all on there. And I mean, I use that all the time for other things. So, you know, again, sorry, it's just a natural thing to me to go to map mart and look stuff up. Worked in a bunch of other counties, and we've got the best map mart here than any of them. So.
Okay, so let me reel it in here and kind of get focused where we can maybe accomplish something this afternoon. How do we all feel about going through line by line? I mean, pretty quickly, and have a reasonable amount of discussion on each one. And Elizabeth, if we feel like there's something redundant on there, we can strike it, can't we?
Certainly.
Yeah, we can vote on it and strike it if it's redundant.
And we're gonna use this property as our
Yeah, why not?
guiding?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so did we talk about preserves ecological diversity and habitat? Does everybody understand what that means? Do we need to have?
Sorry, one more question. Did we want to jump to the State Road 13 property that we thought had a little bit more value, or?
I think it'd be good to do this one just because it's.
Okay, great.
There's
Let's
a
do it.
lot of
Get them both.
discussion on this one, you know?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Do a high scoring one and a low scoring one, so we've got, you know.
Great.
Okay, so you talked about what the habitat is. It's mostly salt marsh.
100%.
Yep. And then the second item there provides habitat for listed.
Let's just stop a second, and just kind of
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit. And that is, you know, there are obviously various suites of diverse habitats. You know, salt marsh is one. I would assume that the evaluation on this in terms of the number would be have some relation to maybe more than, it's not a monoculture of one particular type of vegetation or whatever, it's, you know, various different types that interact well together. That,
Oh, yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
I
both
agree.
upland and perhaps wetland species will utilize, and, you know, again, I'm just trying to go a little bit beneath
No, I-
the surface to say, how do we get to what we're looking for, and then putting it on the scale between 0 and 5.
In my way of thinking, yes, I hate to call this a monoculture, but it is. It's one natural community. Would this rank, in my mind, if I'm looking at scoring this, would it rank as high as if you had something like McCullough Creek, where you have, you know, the freshwater hardwood swamp, and then you have the flatwoods above it and the hammock? No, because there you have a suite of, like you just said, and actually fairly high quality habitat as well, which makes it even better. So McCullough Creek property, whatever we called, whatever that guy's name was, you know, should rank higher. I would think in most people's score.
But on the very first one, does this property as a standalone thing, does it preserve ecological diversity and habitat?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
And that could be a product also of there being little of that elsewhere in the county, I would think, as well, because the
Yeah,
emphasis on the preserves.
Yeah, you'd be weighing all of that.
But every piece of property, unless it's been clear cut and plowed.
Right, and
It's-
clear cut and plowed would get a 0.
Yes.
But this one does. Does it preserve habitat for listed species? We don't know. We haven't been
That's a
given that
Question
information.
mark for me.
But so how do I rank it from 1 to 5? I mean, it does, so that's a yes or no.
Yes.
Where do I find my scale from 1 to 5 on this?
I hear JB saying the diversity factor is not necessarily there, and so it may not be a full, I mean,
Right.
my interpretation, it's not a full 5 because there could be a variety of sources. It could be a larger piece of property, it could have diversity there. But is it preserving ecological habitat on some level?
Is there a benefit to one site having diversity on that scale versus a countywide scale? Because let's say let's say we don't have saltwater marsh, whatever it is. We don't have a lot of saltwater marsh, let's say, in the county. But this is a monoculture of saltwater marsh. I'm gonna use all kinds of terms that may make sense. But on a county scale, that offers diversity to what we have available, even though this particular parcel is very mono. Is there a benefit to one particular site having diversity in of itself?
Well, sure. Yeah, if you had a super rare natural community in the county, whatever that might be, doesn't matter what we call it, and this happens to be the best of it, oh my God, yeah, that would score crazy high. But if you had something, salt marshes, we have a lot of salt marsh in the county, without question. But that's not what it says preserves it. It's not saying is it high quality.
Yeah.
It says preserve the diversity
preserve-
and habitat.
Preserving it.
The diversity on this isn't great. The habitat, it is preserving the habitat, without question.
So Holly, you're saying 3, right?
That's where I,
Yeah.
that's where I.
You
scored.
pegged
Yeah,
it.
exactly. You're a 4.
I got a 3.
Yeah, no, 3 or 4.
Good.
Okay, see,
Scales that are from 1 to 5, because everybody defaults to 3.
I gave it a 5
Yes.
because it does, it preserves what's out there, okay? And so I gave it a 5. And that's the beauty of us all being a diverse group with diverse backgrounds and stuff, because it'll all, even out at the end.
But I think it would be helpful if everyone had access to a land cover map
Sure.
to look at this and say what's actually on the property. For the people in the room who may not be as adept at looking at maps in GIS, having that right away is one step ahead. And then if we wanted to go into the biodiversity factor, we could start looking at an ethne biodiversity layer. Just suggestions.
Well, and we do have
Those are up
a
there.
little bit of the comments from staff,
Like
very,
land cover.
So there's your flux map right there. That's your salt marsh, and then these are the waterways coming from that area. But if anybody has a specific questions in terms of environmental, I'm
Yeah.
here to answer. So
you guys just went out there today, right?
we went to the Gennevar property today.
Jennifer
yeah.
property.
I ranked this one on 3.
Okay, so let's go to the second one.
Question mark.
Yeah, it's a question mark.
Provides habitat for listed species.
Well, see, I would argue, I guarantee if you go out there on just about any day thing on the tide level, you're gonna find listed species.
I would expect you would too.
No, I would be stunned if you didn't.
Again, that's in terms of,
And it's providing
Right.
habitat. It doesn't say, are they there when you were there? It says
Yeah.
providing habitat. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yes, absolutely, it does, in my opinion, it does. For a suite of mostly wading birds that use salt marsh.
And they're
But it would be
shade.
great to be able to have
Yeah.
actual tangible, these
Yeah, that's-
species potentially would use this property.
And that's why I use the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service report generator. They have, you can put in the parcel and it spits out a report for likely species, right? We're not always gonna get
Yep.
occurrence data. But yeah, JB's right. This one hit the mark for wood stork and then a bunch of migratory birds. But it's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, it's IPAC, I can't remember the full
Doesn't FNA produce a map too?
Yeah, they have a
I think that's
bio,
where it's going right now.
and what is that?
I think their information's a little outdated. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service IPAC.
That'd be, no,
Ryan, would it be possible?
just have a list of all these resources.
This is
I mean,
a
I
good
know that
question.
we've worked on them in the last,
No, the link
in the last few meetings.
This is a good question while we have our GIS expert in here. Is it possible that a lot of these big reference materials that we would all, or should all be looking at, could that be included in our packets that we get?
Yeah, you can provide a list of anything that you would like to see on any of these properties, and I can provide them.
Okay. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this will bring those out.
If we all get empirical, true data, we'll all make the same decision. I mean, unless we have political or personal reason not to.
No, I don't think that's true because we're coming from different reference
There'll be some
points.
push and pull.
Yeah.
But
But that's how it should be.
Generally, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. We'll all be looking at the same data.
Sure.
Yeah.
to Travis's point.
We'll just get a few, 7 or 9 machines in here and feed the data and let them decide. I think there'll be differences within,
Guaranteed.
And there should be.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty about it. That's why we're set up the way we are.
Would you typically just draw a polygon?
Yeah, I'm just generally trying to get it in that area.
I guess I'll just,
That'd be
Yeah. Because one of these actually brought up manatee, critical habitat.
Yeah. At high tide. And then at low tide, it's very critical for the manatee.
13 endangered species.
migratory birds. So this is similar to the biodiversity matrix that FNA has.
Yes.
Endangered species.
could be there.
So that's a good data source for this second category.
But yeah, because what that tells you is it could be like really good.
Because habitat's
Sweet
suitable for those
species.
things to be there.
Especially when you compare it to the next one that might go to.
And,
Yeah, it's gonna be
yeah,
on J.
to Wayne's
And
point.
we
Well,
don't
the
have the
beach
resources to go out and do
mouse.
actual wildlife surveys.
And it's not going to have a lot of these, but that's okay.
Yeah, like I'm like, no, not a scratch, not an indigo snake, but that's
So-
where we can refine.
For clarification on
But
this
those
too.
are endangered species.
Well, and-
And this has listed species.
Well, and
which is
also
the next
within,
level.
and within
Yeah.
the polygon,
Yeah.
within the polygon too, you've got some
Yes.
uplands that it's just in. So,
Oh, true.
you know,
Yeah.
even if they're
Some are threatened.
artificial, yeah.
So,
But that's like example of one source we could start with,
Yeah.
and then through input, we can say, you know, it's really likely that there's probably only 2 there, and we should rank it.
yeah, here's another one. And I went over these data sources, I believe, in the first couple of meetings, and we can certainly,
We weren't actually having to decide something when you did that. That's
Yeah.
The application side's helping us remember and learn.
Sure. Yeah, and, whatever sources of information you need, we can pull them up, in real time. If we need more information on a specific species or habitat, on that particular property we're looking at, we've got it here.
Let me ask the question to the group. Would it be more helpful to have this in advance to our meeting? Like in a packet that he sends us in an email?
Would for me.
Or would it be, realistically, time with everybody and everything like that? Or should we just go over it in each meeting?
I think that would take too much time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, discuss it, yes.
Yeah.
Openly discuss it,
So-
but I think
So Ryan, I'm sure I'm throwing you all kinds of things here to do for us, but would that be possible with your GIS expert in here?
Well, I can provide, every parcel is going to be different. And we can certainly go out if we want more information and visit the site, more specific
Sure.
species information or habitat. But, in terms of this list, we want more general type discussion. It's general ranking. And if you have any specific questions, I can certainly answer them on the fly.
And I think that one of the values of this is it does give us sort of a baseline. We've got sort of a property here that it would seem that everybody thinks is well below the level criteria. None of my reasons personally have anything to do with the ecological value of it, and we're spending a ton of time on that. That's great, but all the other stuff associated with it, to me, isn't. But, we can narrow it down to the 5 we love and a few more, because we're not gonna all love the same 5, and then go on a field trip. And really, I mean, this one can be the first draft. It's not saying it has to be the final draft.
We can't go on, we have to go on a field trip by ourselves.
Or we could do a public meeting and invite the whole county to
Then we
come on a
could.
field trip with
Right.
us. Been there, done that before.
And that's how, like, Brevard County does it,
Yeah.
because their subgroup is not
Oh, yeah.
appointed. They can go
They're
out
not
as a
bound,
group and do
yeah.
what they need to do. But whatever, that's not, I'm not suggesting.
I got snake boots, man. I don't know about
Okay, are we good with
Silver
those?
Stars Group
Okay, one
created
more
this.
comment.
I created an MXD, which is just a ArcGIS thing. And I got as much stuff as I could, just like I'm sure you did the exact same thing. And we probably looked pretty similar, because there's only so much that's available. I could share that with you, you probably know what a lot of them are anyway. And for each piece of property, she could run that MXD, it's quick. When she puts it in, and it's not score it, she wouldn't have to score it. She could put out quick maps of certain, I mean, there's a lot of things that would, literally once that MXD is built, it's gonna take her, or somebody, not much time to do that for each thing that we want. You could build a model out of it, you could actually, an AI thing, and it would score it, but I don't think we want to go there. That stuff's pretty readily available, and we could get that ahead of time, and you just use that as a
That would
guide
be
to help.
huge. I mean, I think that would be huge.
I agree.
If we go through each of the items and we know, like, hey, here's the resource that we can grab, and then there's a packet with the piece of property, and it's like, I mean, that would make our ranking system so much more
But you
efficient.
probably love it, your boss might not love that, time that it would require you to do that, but that's the rub. But if the county commission wants something that's got value, I think we need to ask for what we really need to get the best value. We may be told no, okay.
I think that is the rub is, Ryan, I think you're probably saying, joking on this idea that you're gonna be putting together probably substantial analysis and agenda packets for every property that may come in. I mean, safe or not, but my feeling is you're probably saying, geez, I don't wanna, this is gonna be a huge administrative burden. We're saying we need it in order to really properly do this. So I don't know where that lies. I mean, I think it does lie in the county commission. What is their commitment to this program? Do they want to hire another environmental specialist to run it? I don't know, but
That may probably really be.
I think we do need more info going into our ranking, and
Yeah.
right now it's inadequate.
I go back to what I originally said. Every property's different. Another property on the list is up on State Road 13 North. It has very limited habitat. It was used as a former landscape nursery. And so we're not looking at habitat there. It's just, some open space and tree cover. So every site's different, and, the biodiversity matrix is not going to even work in that
Yeah.
case,
But that's okay.
It's
Yeah.
got way more
Because I think we,
on
as a
other
group,
things.
we could probably all judge, wow, does that have recreational value?
Yeah,
Right.
Well, yeah, it does. We could all judge that, because it'd be a 10-acre green space in the middle of
No.
10,000 homes. Okay, that's valuable. Where we're gonna struggle as a group would be ecological stuff, or cultural resources, but we do have a person that can help us with the cultural resources.
Right.
So I agree with you, but this is only gonna answer part of this.
Just a question on this category before we move on. Provides habitat for listed species. If I understand our discussion correctly, we're not saying necessarily that this property has listed species,
right.
but we're saying that it has the habitat to support those listed
That's
species.
exactly correct.
So I got to learn all about bald eagles recently.
Probably not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
Uh-huh.
Which I think are not listed anymore, is that correct? Not listed species?
They're
Threats, not
protected
endangered.
under the Migratory Bird Act, so
That's right.
yes, they are
Okay.
still protected.
But, so anyways, and what I got to learn is that we don't really do much about protecting large pine trees, right? Isn't that where they like to live?
That one species.
Yeah, so bald eagle likes to live in a tall pine tree, I found out. But we don't do anything about protecting tall pine trees. We only have an issue when there's a bald eagle that's chosen that pine tree. And so I think getting to this category is the idea that we're going to protect habitat for listed species, saying, hey, we're going to protect the habitat that that listed species enjoys is an important part. So if there was tall pine trees on a site, and we want to protect the bald eagle, we may say, hey, let's buy this property because it's got tall pines. Is that fair?
That's when you use the points to your advantage, whether he's there or not. It provides habitat for him. So, again,
Spoken like a true grant writer.
Yep.
Of extraordinary.
sorry.
No, I wasn't. So, I'm sorry.
So I guess that the point is, you know, when I first looked at this, I was thinking, you know, how are we ever going to find out if there's listed species on the site without doing a site visit? That doesn't matter. It's just that
They
type of habitat
provide
supports it.
habitat.
You may have information on a specific site, though, that there's a Florida panther that runs through there. You're not gonna have that in this part of the state, but that's just an example. And I would think that that would, with that type of, direct information, that would more likely get a 5 than a 3, just that it provides
Yeah,
habitat.
no, that's. All right. So, next?
Okay, good discussion?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on. Restores degraded lands and opportunity for restoration. This parcel.
I didn't know about used to be the creek and filled in stuff until you said that,
You
but
can't do anything about it.
yeah, I'm just like a 0, because we're not looking at restoring any degraded lands.
Everybody understand that? We good? Next one, preserves open or green space. Property is not developed.
Now, and this is a question, just, again, going to the property on, is it Racetrack Road, the?
13.
13?
13, I'm sorry, the nursery.
Yeah,
This property obviously is not developed. And I guess you'd be preserving it primarily so docks aren't built there, which was the primary thing.
Or it doesn't get built.
Yeah, as opposed to another space that may not have a lot of, great wetlands or diverse species and that kind of thing, but that it's the last enclave in a developed area that might provide recharge and some other factors. Trying to parse, how you score this, and is it related to, it being part of a large tract that's not developed, or maybe, what scores higher on, I guess, a property like this or a property like the other one that is surrounded by development?
to me, that's one reason for so many of these things, because some of them are going to get a 0.
Mhm.
And an extremely developed property offers you an opportunity for restoration, where this one doesn't.
Right.
The one on 13, you've got an opportunity for restoration, so that would score higher on that one. So that's, again, it does go back to the grant writing questions that the state established 25 years ago now, for land acquisition, and there were 99 pages of them back then. So.
Well, I guess what I'm
thrilled that
getting
it's
at
boiled
is,
down
why
to
would any
this.
property that doesn't have development on it not get a 5
Right.
in the way this is written?
I guess I personally would factor in acreage depending on the property,
Size and location.
size and location there. So if it's, a 250 acre open green space, I'd probably rank that a 5. If it was, 3 acres in the middle of a neighborhood that's undeveloped, probably wouldn't rank that very high, personally,
Okay.
right?
See, and I would rank that really high, and that's.
But not
that's
environmentally, but you would for all the other. reasons.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the point.
So,
You have to
so,
just think, is there a house on it? Does it have a parking lot? I guess that's where
Yeah.
I'm kind of putting
Okay,
those things in there. Is that how
Yeah.
people are feeling? Okay.
and that's fair.
So if a property is developed and has an opportunity to be restored, in this category, it would still rank low. Is that what we're saying? Because property, the parentheses say property is not developed.
correct. It would rank low because you'd give it a high one on a restoration
the one above it.
opportunity, the one above it.
Yeah, which would flip.
It basically
Otherwise.
flips. You can go one way or the other with this one.
And Elizabeth, you're saying it relates to the size. Should we change the category to relate to size, or that's just how you interpret that?
I think you just,
Yeah, I would be careful because
It's a-
sometimes small parcels can be really valuable.
Yep.
So,
If it's the last piece, we had a lot up in Jacksonville, that it was just a 1/4 acre lot in the neighborhood. And it was the last one that didn't sell, and there was an enormous oak tree on it. And the neighbors all just went nuts, don't take down this last tree in our subdivision, that we were all living in these houses that you've taken down all these trees, but don't take down this last one. Well, the city councilman said, okay, and that is the best used little pocket park ever. And it a fantastic value for the dollar to save that oak tree and make a pocket park for the neighborhood. So it's very subjective. And, some environmental people would have probably said, "Psh, you've already ruined the neighborhood, what's one more tree?" But, the neighborhood, it's so subjective. And that's why we are all a diverse group here.
I think I said it, go ahead, Ollie.
no, not at all.
I think I said it at one of our first meetings, and that was, what we're gonna have troubles doing sometimes will be, you could spend, I'll make a number, you can spend a silly number, you guys are laughing, you can spend $1 million and get 5 acres near the beach, not beach, but near the coast. That same $1 million, of course nowadays it's 10 or 20, you could get 100 acres somewhere else in the county. How do you compare those two? It's, that's what the state goes through. You could buy 10,000 acres in North Florida or 1 acre in Miami-Dade County. They're the same price. That's tough.
Yep.
Because they all have value, but where do you,
Yeah, what-
that's one of the things that'll be, I don't,
That's
hopefully
what
we'll
the county's
get
paying
into
us
that
the
world.
big bucks for.
So yes, some small pieces can be incredibly valuable. And I don't mean valuable dollar-wise, but valuable.
Holly?
I was just gonna mention, and it sort of blends with some other categories as well, and I'll learn from some of y'all as well, but when I look at this, I understand there's an interest to preserve dock construction, and maybe those are all feasible for these lot owners, I'm not sure. But the general principle in my mind is the only real development or developable property is right here
The edges.
along this southern end.
Yeah, it's touch.
And yeah, exactly. And so in my mind, like, this is marsh. It's gonna be marsh. How much do we really want to invest to own it when we have the opportunity to potentially buy something else that preserves a little bit more so than this might?
Well,
Just in that principle.
take that one step, then you could go to this owner, the county real estate, and say, well, first off, maybe the county needs salt marsh mitigation in whatever mitigation basin this is. That might be a great one. And so then it's worth a lot more to the county to be able to potentially purchase. Or you could go to that person and say, hey, how about a conservation easement on that piece of property with the, and that would be something that would be negotiated. That's not gonna cost a lot of money because that's not going to exactly value super high. And what
Yep.
a conservation easement's gonna be 50-60% of the appraised cost, if you're, somewhere in that range. That's not a lot of money for a small piece. I'm not saying we should do that.
Yep.
You gotta look at all that stuff. It's so difficult to compare properties.
Yeah, I think to Holly's point is, I don't know if anybody took the time to look at what I handed out the last meeting at the very end, but one of the categories I had kind of concocted in my mind was the availability of other tools to sort of preserve that piece of land. And, we can't fill that in anymore, right, JB? There's other.
That could be filled tomorrow. As long as you got enough money for mitigation.
Right, exactly, but
I
there's.
can give you an example right now. The parcel that I'm working on,
That's
that's exactly what's happening.
that could be completely filled in.
But what I'm saying is, there's other tools, there's other mechanisms, there's other permit requirements. I mean, it's not easy. I can't just go start dumping
It's
dirt
this.
in there.
It's all this.
Exactly.
Big money.
So I think to what I think I heard you kind of alluding to is one of the maybe small points we're making in this is that on something like this, there's other mechanisms to prevent it from being another subdivision. We've got planning and zoning, we've got environmental laws, we've got, you know, an umbrella of things that prevent somebody from developing this. And while it's right next to a lot of developed areas, and I'm sure developers could make a beautiful community on that wetland or whatever it is, there's a lot of other tools available. And so I feel like that.
I don't disagree. Development pressure is something that, you know, seems like it's a factor that should be considered somewhere in here.
Yeah, I think that's a
It is.
category
It
that
is.
should be
Yep.
in our criteria is, does the
Right,
property
acquisition.
have other tools available that could prevent its development, as we don't want it to be developed in this certain location? And that should somehow weigh in our,
Under
Right.
acquisition, we have imminent development proposed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's where I look at that,
Yeah.
but yeah.
and I guess I interpret that a little bit differently, as I would think of land. So my background is a planner, right? So I would look at areas that are developing, so you've got a track record of land being developed. And then also you have zoning planning tools. So a property out west that doesn't have a development pattern approaching it may not be imminently developed. But you could also have a property that's right next to a developed area, or developing area, but yet it's, the tools available to prevent development are very strong because of its environmental quality or because of its land use. So I see those as two distinct categories, and I think that's how I put it in, is, again, in my sort of criteria or matrices, is I thought we should look at it from the standpoint of, I have it right here, location of property in respect to development patterns being one side look at it, and then the other side look at it as what are the zoning land use regulations available, because I think those are two distinct type ways to look at land. So I'd like to see that category broken up and you know,
The imminent development proposed, that category?
yeah, I would like, I mean, I personally would like to see it split, because I don't think it's,
No,
there's a conflict in my mind for that.
Well, why don't we push on through what we've got here, and then maybe
Yeah, we
come
can
back
address
and
it
talk
too
about
when we get there.
Make an adjustment on categories.
Just reminding everybody, it's 3 o'clock. Okay,
You know where your children are?
yeah.
Nope.
Are we good with preserves open and green space? We good with that one? The next one is establishes a connection to corridors, provides a resource link. Does everybody understand corridors? So what do we think about this one?
I guess, I mean, I certainly know the concept, and you think of the Odo, the
Yeah.
corridor. In this context, though, I mean, you have, I guess, a connection to the intercoastal. I don't know if you categorize that as a corridor. But I guess my concern is, and I asked the question about the fact that, you know, this, all that land west of it, all that marsh is privately owned, and you know, who knows what's gonna happen with that from the standpoint of a corridor.
well, it's, where's the water body? You can sort of see it when you pull down. The
You mean
creek
intercoastal?
connection.
Could you turn that,
Eagle layer?
coverage off? Yeah.
All right, let's see, put this off here.
The other thing that I, and again, comment that I wrote is, it's surrounded by a lot of development, which would
So this is all salt marsh here.
compromise its,
Is there a water,
This creek that goes straight out to.
yeah, no, I'm just saying, is there a water highlight that turns on a water blue? Creeks. Down, down, right there.
Yeah, it's from the Water Management District, so there's your ditch
Yeah.
that JB was referring to.
Well, if people don't want to put docks out there, theoretically, according to the landowner, they gotta get to the intercoastal somehow, they don't want their dock, their boats just sitting in the mud.
So do we want to bark out some numbers on this establishes a connection to corridors? What do we think? Or are we just trying to understand each line item? Or do we want
Does
to?
it touch that property that was recently acquired, or is being talked about?
Oh, the Jennifer property?
No, sorry, the piece south of Fish Island
Oh, no, the city piece you're talking about.
Road.
Yeah, Fish Island,
No,
That's-
Patty,
here, I'll show you.
southwest corner.
Don't touch the screen.
Yeah.
This and this. It does touch it on the very, very northeast corner.
And those are now owned by
These two parcels are owned by the city of St.
the
Augustine.
city of San Francisco.
These
Oh.
I'll zoom in a little bit.
Well, that changes things a little
Yeah.
bit on the scoring. It's adjacent public lands.
And they're gonna be, it'll be a public passive park, that people can walk in now, and it's got a old wastewater treatment plant that will be taken out, but that will continue to be used for training by the police and the fire, and it's got two cell towers. Other than that, it will be left alone, but it's low quality, just so you know, very important, it's low quality, it's an old dump site, that the city used back in the 60s and 70s. But it's green space.
So corridor, are we using corridor in the context of human corridors or animal or both?
Ecological corridors, because down in recreation, we've got land and water-based trails. That's the way I interpret it.
So again, what I'm looking for is like some ideas on how you would evaluate this particular piece of property and under that criteria. What would you be looking at to say, hey, it's good on that, or it's mediocre, or low on the scale? I mean,
Yeah, to
I
me, it's
looked at all
low.
the development around it and said, you know, that would push it down to me.
I would say this one's middle of the road or low for me because I'm also thinking about potential to expand in the future. And really, like you said, we've got development, the only potential corridor is going to be that Wetland Marsh going out to the intercoastal. But I think this one is one of the categories that's hard for me to think about as being really distinct from proximity to adjacent properties and existing resource-based properties. So that was when I was trying to differentiate between because I kind of think of them the same.
Yeah, to me, the big one, if we're jumping around a little bit, the protects from sea level rise. This is, if left undeveloped, is a place where water can gather. And you know, that's a big talking point lately on the sea level rise.
Oh, you go up a foot or two in sea level, that's a drowned salt marsh.
Yeah.
It's open water.
Exactly.
I would agree with Elizabeth. I think these two categories could probably be collapsed in one. I mean, I would look at adjacency to understand if there's a corridor there. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's how I interpret it.
Which two?
Geographical
Establishes a
proximity
connection,
and
geographical proximity.
Oh, okay.
Definitely though, the one where we're talking establishes a connection to corridors, that is very much a typical grant scoring thing. Because you get extra points if there's connectivity.
yeah, and yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a
Connectivity to what? An adjacent property?
To an adjacent natural area, or whether it be private or public.
So if we're going to combine two of them, we probably have to have a little language from both in the one line item. So could we have something like taking the verbiage from the first one, establishes a connection to corridors, provides a resource link to adjacent properties? Would that capture it? And then we'll just have the one category.
So I'm understanding this, part of this is being driven by the hope that we get grants, and we're trying to match our criteria with grant writing. Okay, that wasn't clear to me in the beginning of this process, but it's fine.
Could you?
Well, and I think proximity is valuable, even if it's not immediately adjacent, because, you know, the idea is that slowly you might be able to acquire over time and make it adjacent. So, geography,
we'll squeeze
I mean,
in-
you can just
How you said that,
leave
Mike?
it geography.
I just said establishes a connection to corridors, comma, provides a resource link to adjacent properties, and we can squeeze in proximity somewhere where it's grammatically correct.
Yeah, so I think for that one, like what I would be looking at is where are the existing conservation lands within a half mile or,
Yep.
less than that, and just trying to piece it together that way. And I think we're kind of getting into that corridor, so I'm good with that.
Establishes a connection to corridors, provides a resource link to adjacent properties.
Or is in geographical proximity.
I would just say adjacent conservation lands, comma,
Potential
resource
corridors.
link.
Okay, say it again. That would- yours is it.
Adjacent conservation lands.
Establish connection to corridors, comma, and provides a connection to
Adjacent.
adjacent
Conservation
conservation lands.
You getting that, Ryan?
Mhm.
Okay. So that'll be one category,
Okay.
right? Okay, that's good. Any other discussion? We'll move on to the next one. Preserves hydrologic resources. Shorty, is this what you were talking about, flood storage?
No, flood storage, yes, sort of, but flood storage is down.
Down
under,
below?
Infrastructure.
Oh, I see it, okay.
What about recharge?
But yeah, recharge is, this is what this one,
Well, this one doesn't have any recharge,
no,
but it does obviously preserve the hydrological
Yeah.
integrity of the salt marsh.
yeah.
We're talking about water for wildlife. Is that what you're saying?
No, just don't even think about wildlife, think about just the hydrology itself. Is it preserving the hydrology of the surrounding area? And it definitely is, because if you cut it up and somehow do something with it, then you're gonna,
With surface water
well,
flow.
it already did when
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Thompson developed whatever that name of that development is up there, I forget what it's called. They definitely messed up the local hydrology,
Mm-hmm.
surface hydrology.
So again, another question. We're not talking about water supply for humans here.
That,
We're
you,
just,
you could be talking about that if it's not a wetland parcel.
okay.
Because this one's pretty broad, so
It's very broad.
thinking about hydrologic resources, I would look at surface water, floodplain, and aquifer recharge.
Yeah, subsurface and surface both.
So do we want to add that?
No, I don't think so.
No,
No?
I think you need to.
Okay,
I'm just suggesting those as the data sources that we would look at.
yep, okay. All right, let's go into the recreation category. Provides outdoor resource-based recreation considering diversity and community need. I suppose you could kayak in that creek at high tide.
I had a question on here, but that's maybe been, I'm not sure, it's access.
yeah, this one.
How you would get in to be able to
It's
use
only
it for
recreational land.
recreation, I guess.
Only
if
from the river.
That, yeah, only from the river.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if the city puts in that park in the southwest there,
But that's all salt marsh.
So,
Yeah, you can't get to.
You can't.
unless it's
But-
an extreme.
oh,
high
okay,
tide, full
there's
moon,
no
and-
creek to get a
No.
recreational craft in, okay.
Yeah, if he zooms in like he's doing right now, that's all salt marsh.
Yep,
Maybe an airboat ramp?
There you go.
I wish it did. It'd be awesome if there was.
That's what all those neighbors right there want.
Yeah,
sure.
No,
so getting back to the scoring, what would this one score in that category?
This one, all three of
0?
them would be low, yeah.
Yeah, 0.
And that's because you physically can't occupy. it.
Yeah, yeah.
We're not concerned about visual corridor or bird watching or anything like that. Right?
Well, I think you are, to the extent that you have access to do that. To me, that's recreation, and, you know, that would be a recreational benefit to the extent that you're able to get there and utilize it to that purpose.
Okay,
In theory, you could through the creek, so I give it a
There.
1.
You gave them one.
Yeah.
You're being generous.
moving on, expands existing resource-based properties.
Oh, I've this on all three of those. No? Other than that, now we know about the St. Augustine one, but that's a highly impacted, I'm not sure I'd call the St. Augustine one so much resource-based, yeah,
I would not.
It might get a 1 because of that connection, but
yeah.
I give that a.
Provides access to land or water-based trails.
It is not on any identified trail map.
It does not. The only way that would, again, at a really crazy low tide, there's no water in there.
Okay, let's go into cultural. Preserves archaeological sites or historical structures.
And again, I think there's a map, do we not have a map that we can use to,
The map mart has this one.
Yeah.
It's right there, it's bright orange, so there's a high probability.
What map are you referring to?
The St. Johns County GIS map mart.
Oh,
got it.
but what is the layer we're looking at?
It's archaeological
Probability.
probability.
So that's a.
On this one, I had a question on it, because, I mean, maybe it's preserving something, but for us to ever actually identify it or harvest it, I mean,
We have
it would
staff.
have to,
It's a question.
I mean,
Yeah, this layer's problematic. And
I assume you'd have to like ruin the site almost to ever know.
You know, the archaeological layer, that's influenced by proximity to water bodies and elevation. Even though it says that, hey, this is a high probability area for archaeological resources, I wouldn't recommend that anything be excavated. I think that if a property like this, for some reason, was acquired, maybe some signage saying, hey, the quarryman sent coquina limestone through this this creek to reach St. Augustine at one point, but I don't think that in a case like this, cultural resources would qualify this property for purchase, a kind of property like this. We would look more so towards historic structures or archaeological resources that I guess are more able to be studied and protected.
If we had the staff report that we're requesting, we would know if there was a master site file that had already been, that he's got access to that the rest of us don't. So, there are those resources to know. Well, all we know is it's high probability, but because it's Florida and it's near the river, everything's high probability.
but that might be worth giving a 1 instead of a 0.
See, that's exactly what was my
And-
thought process.
Which I hear.
I love the idea. for
Without
the-
additional
Quarry
information
Creek
about something
Creek,
specific
yeah.
on the site.
I think we're just gonna have to get used to the cultural section ranking low often, unfortunately, unless someone's bringing a property to us.
That
with
says,
no
hey,
design
this has
and
something.
purposes
Right.
for historic.
Again, grant points,
That's
just
fair.
sits there for grant points.
And you're always welcome to contact me if you want me to take a look at a property that you guys are interested in, just to double check it with any historical maps or to see if any crash report was ever performed on it. Take a look at the property appraiser's website, look at the build years for some of the structures, if there's any on there. It's not always going to be inaccurate, but it'll give you an idea like, oh, this house is 1970, it's not going to be special, but, oh, this house is 1930 or 1900, which is usually the standard build year dates that they attribute to just old houses, but could say 1930 and be 1875, you know what I mean? So if you need me for anything, if you want to run something by me, always feel free to.
Well, okay, since you are our county expert, and unless we start getting 700 properties to review, I would think it would behoove us all if you were to look at each one of those as they come in and give us your thoughts and your expertise. Well, you don't necessarily have to dig into it real hard, but some are going to jump and you go, oh yeah, this could be really, really something quite nice. Like that on McCullough Creek. Higher land right next to a navigable creek. That kind of tells you, oh, that, likely there could be something even though we don't have anything registered on the site.
And even if a property has archaeological resources on, like if there was Native American pottery shards found on it, I may suggest that you guys not consider cultural resources as the main thing for why you're purchasing a piece of property, considering your limited funds. However, if let's say there's something like a native burial mound on the property, and we could turn that into a park and preserve that historical space around that burial mound, I'd say, consider cultural resources high on the list.
So can we get that as part of our process, is Trey, I mean, I think we talked about it now, but can we get a commitment, or what do you need to have in order to say, yes, I'll weigh in on every application that goes through, so that when we rank it, I got some input from the county's
An expert,
cultural
yeah.
resource guy. And Trey, I mean, I think, I was paying attention to your presentation last time, and it wasn't just about archaeological probability, but you were talking about historic ways people use land. You were looking at archaeology resources in a whole different lens than I've ever heard. It wasn't just about going to the master site file and checking the box to see whether there's something in there. You were talking about re-examining our entire landscape and looking at it from a historical standpoint and saying, hey, we may want to preserve this corridor here. We may want to preserve this type of building or this type of architecture. You're not going to find that in the master site file. So if you can weigh in on the process, I think that's super value add for us.
I wouldn't mind if that becomes standardized as properties come in. I evaluate them and.
Can you have the minutes reflect that?
To you guys if
Yeah,
you would
Sean's
like to
running
set up a
minutes now.
process like that.
Oh, okay. Sean, you're capturing these minutes?
Yeah.
Can you make sure that that gets entered in there? Trey, we're putting you on a hook here, thank you.
You're welcome.
But your information is very valuable to us. Okay, let's move on to the educational category. Promotes environmental or cultural resource education.
If I could just start with that one, I think that depends on if there's programming planned for it, like on its own, without some sort of plan for educating or signage or something. How do you conclude on that? And then, I don't know, that was a weird category for me.
I look at it more like, does it allow itself to promote that? You know, and this property, in my opinion, no, it does not. But there's certainly, again, I don't want to go back to that Migratory Creek one, but yeah, there's a lot of interpretation one could do on that Migratory Creek piece
I
of
think
property.
Alpine Groves is a good example.
Boy, there's a lot that you could list, but yeah, so this one, in my mind, doesn't lend itself well to environmental education.
Old form.
But boy, some others do. There's a lot of teaching to be done.
Gotcha.
And the signage doesn't have to be limited to just that parcel of land, but can also discuss what used to be in the surrounding area. Like, I'm trying to remember the name of the park, but there's a sign in it that talks about Diego Plains. You know, that general vicinity and how it's grown over time. So the sign interpretation for natural resources, trees, animals, cultural resources. This building used to be here, this event happened near here.
That piece that the city owns, I mean, the kind of stuff that we're talking about would be, yes, like I mentioned, this used to be the headwaters of Stonecutters Creek. Well, that in itself is not real interesting, but the fact that the creek was so important for transporting stuff, quarry material, or this, it's important to say this used to be a landfill. It's okay, it's not.
I was about to say historic sewage treatment plant.
And it's stories,
Highlight.
but I mean, there's all sorts of things one could interpret.
I
And it
understand.
has value.
I agree.
I think it's great that we're discussing each category like this, because
Yeah.
when we rank it, I'm going to pull up the audio recording, and I'm going to say, what did we talk about for that category? So I remember how I'm supposed to rank it. So, again,
Excellent.
And see that notes, the comments thing, that's where.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to infrastructure. Existing and proposed access and improvement costs.
I don't think there is no access, and no one's proposed any, and,
That would be a zero, you would
yeah.
think.
Yep. Everybody understands that category? There's no combining it or striking it? Okay. Protects property from sea level rise.
This is, for me, where I rank this kind of thing high, that there's nothing on it, and there's more place for the water to go and less infrastructure to get damaged when the water goes there. So,
Do you think we need a qualifier that says protects adjacent property?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I read it again, I'm thinking property generally, so.
this is one that I added on, and that was the language we did. I don't care how detailed you want to make it, but right now, there is grant funding available for this kind of land. So that, it's one reason I wanted to make sure this got addressed, because it's a hot button right now.
Yeah, just want to make sure when we're thinking about it, you know, looking at the neighborhoods adjacent and saying, this is,
We could put in protects property adjacent from sea level
Or
rise,
put comma including adjacent.
including adjacent.
What do you think?
Everybody
Yeah, I
like
think-
that?
Because
Yeah,
you could have two things. You could, that is, if water, say the
Protects
surrounding
property, comma,
elevation is 2 feet above
including adjacent.
marsh
Yes,
level,
yep.
or 3 feet or 4 feet. If it goes up a couple feet, it's not really gonna flood adjacent, but it does allow for storage capacity of surface water in there. So it has value, quite a bit of value. Now, at some point though, if it makes a difference and it goes over top of that berm and gets into people's backyards.
Well,
There's
my
one out
assumption
there
is there's
earlier.
not a whole lot of, I don't know, because I haven't been out there to see it, but my assumption is there's not a whole lot of topography change from the marsh to these houses.
They had to
So there's
build it up
not like a
somewhat.
ton of capacity.
there's not a ton, but they had to build it up somewhat because all of that was wetland.
I know,
Yeah.
but I agree with you.
And so,
Yeah.
like, relative to what it really could be,
Okay.
it may not be a 5, it may be a,
A 3 or 4.
They were all underwater in Matthew, just saying.
yeah, so it's not like a
No.
massive gain on
If you had a strip of uplands
sea level rise.
that was part of it, that might be
That
more
might-
protected.
Yep. Like to the south.
Okay, getting into the acquisition category, purchase cost per acre.
We don't know.
Yeah, how are we gonna know that
Isn't
going
that a
in?
question mark for every one of us?
Yeah,
Yep.
That's gotta be a
is that on our nomination form?
expected price or something, let me see.
Do we need that on here? Is it-
Yeah, yeah.
We do?
Yeah,
Okay,
because, you know why? One big reason, because sometimes it's a donation.
okay,
Amount sought in the
And that makes
sale
it a
is one of
5.
the line items.
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll have that.
We do have a line that says amount sought in the sale.
Does the county not do an appraisal on every piece of this property if you come? Okay,
not going in though.
Not going in.
when do you do it?
Whenever real estate gets the go-ahead, usually after the board approves
yeah.
the acquisition.
Yeah, but we may not want to approve the acquisition if it costs us too high.
Well, we want to know what they're asking. They're not
I
even
would
telling
be
us what they're
asking
asking. They're saying they want some money and then, you know.
This one wasn't on
Sometime in the process, we got to find out what they're asking.
Well, it's on our
It's
nomination
on the
form,
nomination form.
that one-page form that we
What are you asking for?
Yeah, but on this particular piece, we don't know.
These have all come in other securities
Yeah,
ways.
other ways, but in some cases, we do know what they cost. But right now, this piece of property, we don't know because Pat Hamilton didn't tell us.
You might not know.
That's true.
Do we know what it's appraised for tax purposes?
No, sir.
Well, we
I
can
mean, we could
Yeah.
probably pull
Being
one.
wetlands,
Yeah,
it's
it's
probably
like
not too high.
zero.
Yeah.
you could definitely property break it.
Yeah, I'll have to pull that up.
That's right, we don't, for the purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, let's push on. Suitability for grant funding.
To me, the only thing that I see that it's going to get good points for is the sea level rise stuff on the current.
And that's where, you know, I'd be looking for you two particularly for, and
The grant queen.
Yeah.
For sure. The princess or something.
Whatever.
The grant.
So Shorty, how would we give that a number?
Well,
5 or 1? How would we assign a number to that category?
if something jumps out at you, like, let's use Alpine Groves, okay? When we were evaluating that, it's on the water, it's got habitat, it's got a historic house on it, it's got water flow through it. It's off the chart on everything. And so suitability for grant funding,
Off the chart as
Off the
well.
chart.
Okay,
county paid $5,000 for that property. The state paid 1.2 million. So, yeah,
The McCullough Creek property
Yeah.
is within the St. Johns River Blueway.
yeah,
yeah,
lots of
Bing.
Bing, yeah. There's triggers.
okay.
That to me, out of all of these criteria here that we're looking at, the only big trigger on this right now in the current grants and lack thereof is the protecting properties from sea level rise. And it may not even be that great on that, but
So
No,
is the
and it-
category, sorry.
Right, it would probably be a good proposal for the National Coastal Wetlands Grant Program, but you need a state sponsor for that, and it's a pretty heavy load. So that's one that, you know, I would say not great for grants.
yeah.
So 2, 3?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Probably a one or
It's
two.
pretty low, yeah.
Okay.
So that I understand, the category is not necessarily redundant. I know you pointed to some of those other things as justification why we get a grant, but is the reason that it's a separate category is that there's existing grant programs in place?
That's
So they
what-
may change over time, so because we have awareness of the grant programs existing, and this property fits those existing programs that are out there, that's what makes it score higher level.
I think so, yeah.
If it hit, like she said, 4 or 5 of them, then the likelihood of getting at least one of those is good, which
Yeah.
would.
Understood.
I mean, there's so many, and they're coming back now. We went through 6 years of drought, no grants, and now things are coming back, and it's just a moving target all the time. We're not sure what's coming in.
Hey, we might get done with one. I'm looking at Holly's face.
Okay, the next one is listed on state or federal agency acquisition priority list.
So that's,
That's a yes or no answer. at this
a yes
point.
or no, basically, yeah. But you want to explain what that priority list is, so,
Well, the biggest one by far would be the state's Florida Forever acquisition list, and that's a layer. Excuse me, I hate to use bad terminology. So, but anyway, I just call it a layer. It's a lot easier to understand. That Florida has put out, so we can go on, click, and we know exactly what's in their priority list for acquisition. And we actually have a couple properties that are in. And that is awesome, because you can go right to the state and say, hey, we'd like to partner. You know, we have $50,000, would you put up $100,000?
Yeah.
And they're gonna go, it's on our list, we'll rank it. We might not be in the money, but we might be in the money.
if we were in Central Florida, there's a wildlife corridor that goes up through Central Florida. Anything that comes up in Marion County, the state buys it. You know.
So, since that one's so very clear, in our packet, someone from staff would have that category and they would say yes or no?
Yes.
Right there.
Perfect.
So these are the
This is the easiest one.
Board of Trustees corridors. There's 3 of them in our county.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the, you
12
printed that
mile.
map for us
Yeah.
a couple meetings ago.
Were there any other programs we were thinking of considering? Forever?
Jan, at one of the first meetings had like, one of the maps of all of the different lands and all of the different programs and all the different stuff. I don't know, but, you know, we're still lobbying for FCT to come back. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but, yeah.
Okay, next category, public support.
That's a tough one today, we don't know.
Yeah.
It could become, well, okay, if we're talking
at Fish
about
Island.
Genovar,
Yeah, Jennifer, Fish Island,
heck,
yeah.
some of these I don't think we'll ever really know, especially some of these really tiny ones. If the local neighborhoods knew about the possibility, you never know, it's a hit or miss. When the city purchased a piece called, what is it called, Coquina Park, half the neighborhood thought it was the greatest thing, and the other half, thought it was a waste of money. Of course, they all use it now.
All the time.
But that's a shot in the dark.
But, okay, just having been through this one, especially with this particular realtor, if it was something we were considering, trust me, we'd all be getting emails with public support on this one. So, you know, you'll see that. And then, again, sorry about keeping going back to the grant thing. The public takes a bus with you and goes over to the grant panels, and it makes a lot of sway if you've got public support on stuff, and a lot of sway if you don't.
So would this normally a lot of times be zeros or ones? Zeros, really.
So we get rid of
There's
the
a
category.
couple that's
Until
0
we
to
hear
5.
about it.
Until you hear about it, yeah. But if,
Or if 10 people show up to this meeting
correct.
and speak on behalf of the property, maybe that's gonna.
I don't like that though, because you get the squeaky wheel, or you get someone with an agenda that
That is
assembles a
how we
bunch of
have
their.
bike paths next to our roads all over this state.
I know, I'm just saying.
I'm just, yeah.
To measure public support through the few people that come out, to me, is
Very
not
difficult.
a good measure.
I'm not sure how else one does that.
I don't think it's a category, really. I feel like it should be stricken.
Well, I would disagree. There are some that have gigantic public support, and I think to give it an extra 2 or 3 points, it's really not gonna make a heck of a lot of difference on the overall score, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, that Fish Islands one, you know,
Well, that
I
was
mean,
insane.
my goodness. Yeah, I mean, they're a hugely organized group that lobbied for quite a while and made that happen. So,
7,000 signatures.
yeah. So, you know, I mean, there's examples where public support can be a really positive thing.
But we wouldn't know that when we're ranking this stuff, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I think there might be some categories that it's not like a score, it's just like a line, you know, there's no points either way. It doesn't hurt it, but it doesn't help it. So maybe this could be one of those categories.
I mean,
Zero is the same thing.
yeah, I guess I'm just not seeing where that comes into play at the time we're getting a property presented to us.
But I
Unless
think-
we're gonna start seeing people show up at the meeting.
Well, but it doesn't hurt it either.
But down the road, when we start
Yeah.
getting these things coming in on the website, we could very easily start getting local neighborhoods supporting or not a project. I think that could be very real.
And I think comparatively speaking, it is a factor in my mind. If you got one that is totally silent and no one feasibly cares about, but then you've got this huge advocacy for something else.
Or there's somebody, there's. a
Where it may be
legitimate-
zero every time because nobody speaks, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, or you've got a legitimate complaint from the neighborhood about making it into public property. I always look at that as an opportunity for education, but, you know, it could certainly, it has happened a lot.
Okay, so it sounds like we have more of a majority that want to keep it on our matrix. Is that correct?
I think
Yep.
it kind of comes back to we are a public board,
Yeah,
and I think it's incumbent on us to
okay,
consider that.
okay, good. We'll leave it there then. Next one, imminent development proposed.
That was Fish Island.
That was Fish Island.
There actually was a BUD and everything.
On that, imminent is, in my
I-
mind, kind of a strong word.
How about development?
When you've seen a,
Likely?
Pressure or development.
Yeah, well, likelihood of development
Yeah.
seems like then there's kind of a sliding scale with it. I mean, imminent is like yes or no to me,
Development potential.
so.
Well, likelihood of development, I like, I personally. do.
Just likelihood, change eminent to likelihood?
What would you
Everybody good with that?
She's mulling.
No, I'm okay with the words as long as we're,
Got that rhymed?
Yeah.
Likelihood,
Yeah.
okay.
there's a PUD on this property.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
yeah, as long
Well,
as the
then it
thought
would be a
remains,
five.
yeah, as the thought remains, it's a good thing, right?
And to me, that captures your
And
point about
somehow,
other tools, because,
yeah,
you know,
that's
Because of
when the
permitting
public
burden for some-
support comes out
Mhm.
most, is when there's a threat of
You're exactly
development.
right.
So they go together.
Well, and then likelihood kind of brings in
The zoning
the
stuff.
tools of like, it's not that likely because they got to go through all these things.
I agree, that's good.
Okay, let's move into maintenance, long-term costs.
These
This
I
one would
had,
score high on that,
Go ahead.
because there's no cost.
well, and these, I found any of the ones that I was evaluating was kind of like, it all depends on the interest of either running a program on it or just letting it lay fallow. And so, I don't know. To me, that, it seemed sort of
Well,
a
you
step
could have
beyond our decision.
if you were preserving this parcel for more of those passive values like flood control or whatever, and without a thought that you're gonna develop it for active recreation, you know, then that's a differential. If you're gonna develop it for active recreation, then, you know, there would be more long-term cost, and maybe it wouldn't be really restoration costs.
I don't know if this
But-
is Sean's world, but when this county gets a piece of property, they're gonna be managing it. The question is, what level of management, as we were just talking
Yeah.
about? If it's a piece of, again, pine flatwoods that requires some level of management versus a salt marsh, or some very, a beautiful maritime hammock that all, you know, the only management you'd be doing in that
You're
would
not gonna be burning that.
We wouldn't be burning that, but you'd be doing exotic plant removal. That'd be your cost. You know that up front. But where if it's flatwoods, you're gonna have to either be mowing it or burning it. So that would mean that obviously the long-term management cost would be greater.
Or you take the property that's on State Road 13 and that, if if we had interest in acquiring it, it would be with the idea that it would be
Become a
recreation
park.
space, and
Right.
so there was gonna be added cost, I
Lot
guess,
more
so
costs.
that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, that would
Well,
be-
I guess here's the question though, is if we're scoring high on recreation potential and then discounting it for the cost of management, is that really a fair trade-off?
But it captures both, you know, I mean, it captures both. What if we're given a country club? You know, that wouldn't necessarily come under this program, but what if we're given a country club? There's a lot of operational costs, but maybe no restoration costs, no, you know, and still does, there's ways it's gonna get,
Okay.
If I can add in too, you know, in the western part of the county, there's still some late 19th century farmhouses sitting on like 20, 30 acres. And right now, there's a few that I'm keeping their eye on that are occupied by older people. And if the inheritors decide to sell the property, we'd be looking into maintenance of the houses too. And I guess that should be considered as well.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
could be
any
existing
management
buildings or
costs.
existing structure and that stuff.
Absolutely. In fact, you might have to put a bunch of money in it
yeah.
to
Well-
get it back up to standards.
In parks, when we're doing our, you know, annual budget, you know, to the commission every year, you include your maintenance costs for existing properties and, you know, Alpine's got a, you know, huge annual budget because of ongoing maintenance there. So it's, you know, this helps capture that.
It does.
Because sometimes the county will say, yeah, no, that's just too much for long term.
Okay, moving into the next one, restoration costs, suitability to restore or not.
That's kind of what we're talking about.
We good on that one? And this is the catch-all, the bonus, exceptional quality or uniqueness.
Does long-term and restoration costs kind of go together?
I was gonna ask the same question.
I mean, it's just
No.
like
No.
carry cost.
This is
Not
just
like
at all.
a
specifically restoration.
Restoration versus
All right.
operational.
And it could be, this is where restoration costs could be a cultural resource, a historic resource, or it could be a piece of
Environmental.
woods.
Yeah. But yeah, in the first one, the long-term cost is more operational.
Restore marsh by taking a couple of ditch blocks out, which would be minimal cost.
And
Should we put operational by long-term costs?
We can.
Long-term operational costs?
It'll be good to get the input from staff on these too.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
if you had a Genovar property, their restoration costs are gonna be fair, a lot of exotics, exotic plants. Their management costs are gonna be through the roof, because they're gonna be putting a boat ramp and all the infrastructure.
Yeah, construction costs are gonna be crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's gonna be, it's worth it, I'm not saying it's a
Yeah.
bad thing, but boy, the cost for Genovar are gonna be, it's probably as much as the cost of the property.
Mm-hmm.
Improvements to US one, deceleration, like all that stuff.
Yep.
Again, worth every penny of it, but
Yep.
yikes. I hope the commissioners know how.
Okay, so we've all agreed that that's two separate categories. We good with that? Okay.
I think the only problem with that though is, if you look at a vacant piece of land, it doesn't have any restoration costs in terms of, if we're looking at a historic structure. But as soon as it has a historic structure, we're gonna start assessing that there's cost to it, which then works against the cultural resources
Well-
value. It's almost like because now there's cost associated with it, it's not as desirable.
But on the other hand, you gave yourself points up above for educational value and cultural resources that you might not get for just a fallow piece of land.
Understood, but I'm saying, you're given points here only to take them away in
What
the
if-
same matrix.
What if you don't take them away though? What if,
Yeah.
we're told, oh, there's not that much effort to go into restoring it. We'll actually preserve it exactly how it is. And we find out, oh, there's not
Yeah.
that much cost to it. And that actually will rank it high. I don't know. I mean,
No, I know.
there's so many hypotheticals here.
Well, and we've had instances where we've purchased things not realizing what the long-term costs were gonna be. It was just a knee-jerk, oh my goodness, we have to save this. And then there's been demolition by neglect because there hasn't been any money put aside every, year to restore and or just maintain it. So capturing the fact that we're aware of that, I think is important.
So I guess in that category though, because if it's a vacant piece of land, you can't all just jump to 5 then, right? Because you gotta allow some weight in the cultural resource property that there is gonna be some level of cost associated with restoring it, however low that may be.
It may be high,
Well, you've
or
got
the
up-
long-term
Up
cost.
in infrastructure, you're looking at, improvement costs in infrastructure. So you're capturing, if you're gonna use it for something, it's being captured there too, so I don't know,
I do think these things have a way of really,
Yeah.
really working themselves out. This gets a little more, this gets a little less. Yeah, the last one, boy, you talk about subjective.
Yeah.
The last one's but I think I think it's a great one, by the way. The fact that there's gonna be some pieces that they're just gonna like pop at us.
And it'd be a really good exercise now that we're kind of understanding each one of these really in depth, would be to get a really, what looks like a really good environmental piece, and then a really good cultural piece, and do them together, so maybe we can see if what I think is gonna work out, works out, and they both score high.
That'd be a great idea, yeah.
You gotta find us one, brother.
I'm keeping my eye out for them.
I know you are, I know you are.
But
Sanchez Farmstead.
Gotta move the house back.
Okay, so we've really worked this matrix nicely this afternoon, folks, and it's 3:45.
Oh my.
So I don't think we're gonna get much further than this today.
Let me just ask the question. I mean, Ryan, do you think you have a good idea, or in terms of, as we've gone through this, kind of standard resources that we'd be looking for on
Yes.
some of these items?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think what we've talked about, Wayne, is pulling together a packet for each parcel and email it out to us so we have an advanced look at it before we come to the meeting.
Could I please request that they come in separate emails?
Each property?
Yeah,
Big files?
the way Gmail does it, it just mushes it all together and it all prints out in one big thing, and it's really frustrating for me. Sorry, but
So where that leaves us is, I mean, we've only gone through one property, and I think maybe perhaps the next one that's on our list here under item number 2, 2310 County Road 13 South, that may score differently than what we've been looking at.
isn't that?
Is there a way that we could get a packet
That's McCullough.
on that parcel, that McCullough Creek parcel, that all of us could have an advanced look on it with all the resources, all the data, so that we're all looking at the same thing, and then, I'm just suggesting this, the next meeting, we focus on that one and run it through like we did today, and see how effective it is for a tool.
I have a question. When you say packet, could you list what items, because I don't want to leave anything out?
Okay, what were we talking about? An FNA map?
Land cover map, official
Right here.
wildlife report generator for,
Cultural resources?
or F9 for species.
And we're talking about zoomed into the parcel, right? We're not
Right.
talking about just throwing a
No,
countywide
no,
map.
with the polygon of the parcel on it.
Gotcha.
Let me throw out one important qualifier. The data that is created by groups like FNA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, is meant for big, broad areas. When you start to hone in to even 100 acres, but particularly 5, the data is just, it can't really handle it. So don't be surprised if you think, wow, that should score higher. It's just the pixel size when they did
Yeah.
their modeling
Yeah.
could not
And-
accommodate something that's
And
small.
you were talking about something with the GIS person about a set of maps that you had generated?
Well,
What did you call that?
I would be more than happy to get with you a couple weeks, down, and share with you, which you probably know a lot of anyway, share with you everything that I have pulled together that I use for an evaluation. And then we can see that.
How does that
And
sound?
that would pull kind of a report.
Well, depending on how we want it to be, yeah.
Sean, can you have the minutes reflect that?
Yes.
So what I can do, because, we review for properties all the time with our development review committee. I can just provide an overall environmental comment for listed species, yes, no. Flux map, kind of give a breakdown of what I typically look at. So you guys, have that information up front. When, say a new property comes in, here's an aerial, here's my comments. We'll be sure to, supplement those comments with the information you're requesting.
I think that sounds like a really good start.
Yeah, all I was gonna say is I don't know if this would be more for Ryan to make maps. I don't mind helping. I just don't know where my role comes in. I'm new. This is my fourth week. So I just don't know where. I'm more than happy to help out where I can. I would be working with Ryan.
This is a good training project.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll contact Ryan since I don't have your contact,
Yep.
and we will meet and talk about it.
Okay, okay, Wayne.
I was just gonna say, what is our goal at the next meeting? Is it just to do one more property or because we just kind of fooled around with this Anastasia Lakes. I'm not sure we really did a real scoring of it. I mean, is our goal to score or come prepared at least to go through scoring on all the ones that we have? Or, because, the end of the year is coming near.
You could test the process, see what staff report he produces, and we score it like we would, and test it and see if it works.
Yeah, I think we kind of made a laborious tasking with this exercise this afternoon. I think if we have everything, we could move much more quickly on that McCullough Creek parcel. And if you want to, we could even come back to this one that we did today and put our scores out there. Now that we know what we're looking at. So why don't we do that? Why don't we finish this one, the Anastasia Island, Fish Island Road project. We'll score that one with what we've done today, and then we'll do the McCullough Creek parcel with the new set of data that we're gonna get.
Could we look at the State Road 13 Fruit Cove parcel? Well,
I think we need to score what we've got, at least individually,
Yeah.
and then come prepared to talk about them and get through as many of them as we can.
yeah, because that one might get sold, we
Two of the
might want to
properties
jump
come
on.
up.
Which,
Well, and if we're
Correct.
trying to get to January, we got
Right,
2 meetings, right?
right.
So
So let's ask the question, is this a mock exercise, or this one's gonna stick?
I think it probably needs to stick at this point.
Mike?
Yes.
I hate to add 2 more minutes to this meeting, but this board has not existed for 2 years. So the county already has a process for deciding what they're gonna buy, right? This is a prime example.
Yeah.
So, who did the due diligence on this property? Did you guys do this?
Real estate. The real estate
The county's
department.
already got an organization in place that does this. It's been doing it for at least 2 years because this board has not existed.
Right.
longer than that, wasn't it?
4 years. Ever how long
It's been a
it's
bunch of years since there was a lamp.
Land board had been gone.
So
2008.
there's all sorts of political issues here that come up. Do the county people, are they gonna resent us dumping this much work on you guys? And you already got a process to do this.
Yeah, we can come up with the, comments that you guys request with each property.
So you found out about this piece of property.
Mhm.
Somebody did.
Right.
And somebody in the county commissioners asked you guys to do whatever you do before and you took this to the county commission, they said, well, we're gonna buy this.
Correct.
It's pretty straightforward then.
Yeah.
So they went on the staff recommendation.
Yeah, they already got a
Yeah, they
staff
went
to
on
do
the
this.
staff recommendation of what we're trying to do right now. That's what you're saying,
Yeah,
right?
are we overseeing?
Are we spinning our wheels?
Are we overseeing the staff work?
Right.
I think we created a enormous bureaucracy
Yes.
in trying to administer $500,000 funds, and I would support a motion that we recommend that the LAMP committee be dissolved and that the staff would do this in their existing channels. I know that's unpopular, especially coming from the LAMP board, but I don't know if that's where you're going, but I find this an extremely bureaucratic process to administer $500,000 funds. We're adding a ton of work to Ryan's plate.
Yes.
We got staff sitting here. I don't know how much all this costs, the overhead of being here, but again, I think it's a kind of I don't want to say a waste of resources, but a poor use of resources. So wherever that falls.
I think we're at the beginning of something, and how long have we been meeting now? Is it a year?
No.
Since January was our first meeting.
January, okay, so 3/4 of a year, something like that. And, yeah, so we've had 4 meetings. So, I think we're trying to crawl and figure out the best way to do things and come up with procedures and be efficient and everything like that. I think this board is a good tool for the county. I hear what you're saying, Jimmy. I mean, none of us want to waste our time. And we want to be effective, and we want to do a good job, and that's why we're in here. That's why we volunteer for this thing, because we believe in the mission and the concept.
Well, my point is, the only thing we've accomplished, I've been educated to a certain extent, and we've dumped a tremendous workload on the county staff. That's the only thing we've done so far, in my opinion. And the county already has a process to acquire land.
I don't really think they have a process.
No.
It's knee-jerk.
if I could respond.
You know better than I would.
Since the work's been dumped my way. I hear what everybody's saying, and I understand the concern with providing resources and getting the information, but I think I have all the information you really need here, right now, here on the fly, when asked. And I understand you want to have a lot of the upfront information first, but say you're looking through this at home, doing a home exercise, and you have questions. What are the list of species? What are this or that? Certainly give me a call, and I can do that, as needed, instead of, the upfront stuff that's requested now. That just a recommendation.
Okay, so you bring up an interesting point, and I think your proposal, I don't know if it's an official motion on the.
I would like to make it official, yeah. I would like to make an official motion that we recommend, or we put together a letter to the county commission recommending that after going through this process, that we very much support the mission and the intention of the program, but find the best path forward is to dissolve this board and reallocate those $500,000 of funds, or 1.5, to whatever fund that went to support that real estate purchase. I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, is there a second for this motion?
Damn, I'm not ready to second it today, but do it next month.
I'd like to make a comment.
Any
I'll
discussion?
make it very brief. There's no discussion on the motion.
Okay.
Because there's not a motion on the floor.
Okay,
It's just that, the county commission created this body for a reason.
Yes.
Because they saw the value in having some allocation of money for acquisition of cultural, environmental, all the things that are listed here, and having citizen involvement in choosing those lands to purchase with that money, and finding ways if it's possible to partner and maybe multiply that money. So I think we're here for a purpose, and we're finding our way in how to move that ball. I don't think it'll serve the purpose of saying, let staff do this.
I want to agree with you. I know the Civic Roundtable, the NERC folks, the Riverkeeper, a lot of public-facing agencies supported the recreation of the land board, and I think we'd be letting them down.
As did Commissioner Newman. He worked hard for it.
Yep.
okay, so let's think about this. There's no second, so there's not going to be any action this afternoon. I think in the interest of time, I see everybody's starting to pack up. We have a few more things here. Board member reports, staff reports.
Could I just invite everybody out to Alpine Groves this weekend? From 10:30 to 1, we'll be doing tours of the farmhouse,
What day?
Saturday.
If you haven't been there, it's a wonderful place.
Very well.
And
Yep.
we will have air conditioning on Saturday.
I have a new job. I'll just
Yay.
throw that out there. No longer affiliated with Flagler, although I may go back to teaching one of these days when I get some more time, but I now work for the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation. So,
Congratulations.
I work remotely, so I'm still in St. Augustine for the foreseeable future, and we'll continue to help move this forward.
You're not permitted to leave or resign.
And that's a very worthy
That's
program that she works for.
fabulous.
It's really cool.
Come meet with my boss. She loves the corridor.
And real quickly, we're not gonna talk about Genovar today, but I think we need to consider putting Genovar on our list.
Why? It's,
They don't have it funded.
Do you have a willing seller?
Yes, very well so, apparently. The
Right.
county's negotiated. Is there any reason why we'd use our monies to help on Genovar?
I believe from real estate from today, they said that we were planning on closing by December of this year. So we're working on that now.
Is there any harm in putting it on our list because we think it's a really high-ranking property?
definitely, I mean,
Doesn't mean that we're gonna use any of our dollars if it
to
happens.
throw our raw behind it.
If you have some conceptual management plan ideas or topics you'd like to
Yeah,
add,
we just would support it as being one of the highest priorities in the county. That just helps justify what the commission voted for. Because it's a pretty big deal. To be able to, for the county to get a boat ramp under one is amazing. And a boat ramp on deep water,
On the water,
on deep water.
on real water.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll stick around.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming out, and thank you for your patience. We'll figure this out. We'll figure this out.
thank you, Ed.
Got some brilliant minds here.
We have some lines in right